Beth Haggard, and I'm here to share with you a little bit about Indiana Task Force 1 and FEMA USAR, and then we will take some question and answers at the end of this. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a highlight, and before I ever made Indiana Task Force 1's team, I am a career firefighter paramedic for Greenfield Fire Department, which is just east of Indianapolis. I have been a career firefighter paramedic for 27 years. I am the most senior person at Greenfield Fire Department. In that capacity, I have worked as a paramedic on the ambulance, and currently I am the chauffeur and engineer for our engine. I've also been able to work teaching EMT classes, helping teach paramedic classes, precept paramedic and EMT students on fire departments in Indianapolis. So I've had a lot of experience in the fire service. I started as a volunteer when I was just out of high school, 18 years old. So I've been in the fire service for over 30 years. So it goes by in a very quick blink. I've also a substitute teacher in the schools. So besides that, I have been on Indiana Task Force 1, which is a FEMA USAR team, for 14 years. So FEMA, and I'm just going to give you a rundown on what Indiana Task Force 1 and FEMA is, and then we'll get started on a PowerPoint and I'll show you some pictures. Indiana Task Force 1 is one of 28 USAR or urban search and rescue teams throughout the country. Indiana only has one. Some states have more than one, and only a couple of them will go international. The rest of us will stay in the states and will take care of our U.S. territories. Our team has a little over 200 members. There are different divisions. Some of those are rescue, which is our largest division, communications, logistics, medical, which I'm on. That's just a few of them. So I am a medical specialist, or we go by med spec, and we take care of the health and wellness of our entire team. And we make sure that we stay well so that we can stay deployed and get our work done and not sent home early because we're sick. So we take care of also not just our humans, but our canines, because they're part of our search team. When we are called out, we go to where the disaster is and help the local fire and EMS, and we support the operations that they are doing. We do not come in and take over. We come in and say, what can we do to help you? We support them with specialized equipment that we bring and with our specialized personnel. When we arrive, we are self-sufficient for up to 72 hours, so we bring our own food, our own water, our own showers, and our own ability to go to the bathroom so that we do not put a load on the system. And then by that point, by the end of the 72 hours, Red Cross and other people are coming in, and then we can start using what they're doing to support the efforts. We train as a division every month. As a team, we train every quarter. And once a year as a team, we will train for a 3 or 4 day training exercise. In Indiana, we are very fortunate. We have Muscatatuck and Camp Atterbury. So we do quite a bit of team training there. Sometimes we will go out of state so that we can function in a different environment and in different terrain, which we will get to do next year. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. We do have numerous opportunities to work with the military. More and more as we're deployed, we will work and be paired up with the military. So we have worked with our military and have been very fortunate to work with the Israeli Defense Force. So those are some really cool experiences, and I'll show you some slides on that as well. I've been on the team since July of 2005, so for 14 years I've been a medical specialist. I've had the opportunity to be on most of the training exercises and all the deployments but 2. So I've gained quite a bit of experience and learned a lot, which I will go over some of that with the PowerPoint. I want to talk about real quick sacrifice. I know a lot of people see that we make a sacrifice when we leave our lives to go out and take care of people in the hit area, but our families make, I believe, a bigger sacrifice than we do. When we leave, we dump our family We dump our responsibilities on our families, and I want to just recognize our families for their support. Without them, we could not do what we do. So when people look at us and think that we make a sacrifice, we believe that our families make a bigger sacrifice. So to all of our families out there, I say thank you for supporting us so that we can do what we do and go help people when disaster hits. With that being said, we're going to start with a PowerPoint, and I'm going to go over some of the training exercises I've been on, some of the biggest deployments that I've been able to be part of. And through the PowerPoint, I will explain more what Indiana Task Force 1 does and what my role is. So with that, we will get started with my FEMA deployments. This is a super cool picture. I'm going to give photo creds to one of our doctors. Dr. Strachan took this, was North Carolina for Hurricane Florence. You see me in one of the military vehicles. Because we have started doing more wide area searches, we can get there quicker and get through the areas faster when we pair up with the military and we get in their vehicles. So we were able to stay with the same military crew and got to know them really well. Awesome guys, but this is just a picture of a flag that we found that was in a tree that was rescued by one of the military guys we were with, and we put it on our vehicle and went with us everywhere we went. So this was Hurricane Florence. Right, here I am. So one of my jobs as a medical specialist is to make sure that we do pre-deployment, and that includes training, physicals. So we do a quick physical on everybody to make sure that they're healthy and that they're well and that they are able to be deployed and don't have anything contagious that can spread and make the team sick. This gives us a baseline of how they're doing individually so that we can then keep track of them through the whole deployment. So this is what I'm doing prior to a training exercise that we went as a small group to a military base in Florida. And this is us filling out. It's a lot of paperwork, but it's how we can keep track if there's injuries so that they can get covered by workman's comp, and so that we can just keep track if there's any problems. FEMA requires that we turn paperwork in on a deployment every single evening so that our incident support team has the paperwork at the end of the night to show what we did, who we took care of, what their problem was, what we did for them, and were they able to go back to work or did we have to pull them? So that is what I'm doing, is starting the paperwork for physicals. This is the training exercise in Florida that I was doing a physical for earlier. So what we initially started training for with USAR was for rubble piles, where we would have collapsed structures, we would have concrete rubble pile, and we would have to find the victim, get in, stabilize them once that the area is safe, and then medical, we would treat them and stabilize them medically until we could package them and get them out. So mostly now we do wide area searches, but we do still train on rubble piles. Here we're working with the military. When we do that, what is super cool is we're paired up with our counterparts in the military. So I pair up with people that are in the medical division military, and then we work with their equipment so that we can show them how we would use their equipment and how we package and get the patient out. So this is what we're doing, is crawling around looking for our patient, which the next slide will show, as we're pulling a patient out through a concrete culvert tube where we have packaged and we pulled the patient out. So this is just some of the trainings that we get the opportunity to do with military. In the same training exercise, we were doing wide area searching. So you see us walking here with the military. We just kind of go over what we do with them. Sometimes they will do the searches with us. So we explain what FEMA expects from us when we go through neighborhoods, what we're looking for, what we're asking people when we make contact with them. So it's not new to them, but what's new is what FEMA expects. So this is just a really good way for us to really marry up what we do from a civilian side with the military. Okay, so I'm just gonna say from Indiana, we are totally fascinated when we go for hurricanes with crocodiles, alligators, and armadillos. So we take a lot of pictures of the animals because it doesn't take much to fascinate us. So this was Hurricane Ike in Houston, Texas. We were in this picture. It is flooding as we head up to the road. There was a small group of us in a military vehicle that was sent out to a place called Sabine Pass. This was a very small town that had been totally cut off. Nobody had heard from them. They knew there were people there, but nobody could make contact. So we were going out to do the searching of the town so that we could make sure that people were okay, rescue them and bring them out. So this is what we saw on the way. The next picture is as we came over that bridge. This is the ocean, but that's not where the ocean should be. So Sabine Pass was still miles away. We had some boats with us, but the rest of us loaded up into the military vehicle and drove basically through the ocean while there was a driving rainstorm, and to get out to Sabine Pass so that we could do some searching. We did find people. Nobody was injured, but they needed to be rescued and moved out. So this was us preparing to go out to Sabine Pass. With Hurricane Ike, that was a very unique hurricane because we started out Hurricane Gustav, and we weathered that, and there's a picture in a barracks where we were sent out for some searches, and then Gustav was not as big of a hit as they thought it would be, but Ike was on the very tail of that, and they knew that that was going to be a Category 4 or a Category 5. So they ended up demobilizing us from Gustav at midnight, and at midnight 01 redeployed us to Hurricane Ike. This was the longest deployment up to that point that any FEMA teams had had. It was a 21-day deployment. Anytime up to that point we were deployed, it was for 14 days. When they did this, they stopped our clock at the 14-day mark for Gustav, and then started a new 14-day mark for Ike. So with us being out for 21 days, we came back a little early. We had some downtime in between before Ike hit. So we were staying in Houston and had an amazing opportunity to go out to Texas A&M, where we worked at Disaster City at Teaks. So what we were doing was training, working together as a team, getting us acclimated to the heat and humidity, because we knew once Ike hit, we were doing a lot of walking, and we needed to make sure that we were acclimated to the weather. So this is Teaks, and this is some of the amazing props that they had down there. Sleeping. We sleep anywhere we can lay our heads. We do go with the different numbers in our groups. So we can go anywhere from 16 people to, with Hurricane Ike, what you see here, ended up being an 80+ member team. We call that a Type 1. And it is difficult to find a place for 80+ members to lay their heads. So we go to a lot of churches, school gymnasiums, or school hallways. This is a convention center. We're just laying on the concrete floor. So we were there for a couple of nights, and we stayed together pretty tightly as a team. A lot of times we're married up with a lot of other teams, so we have a very small footprint when we sleep. This is another place they like to put us, in military barracks, because they don't have to pay for a hotel fee. It houses a lot of people. This was while we were getting ready to bunker down for Hurricane Gustav. So this is the men's barrack. The women's barracks was next door, and not nearly as crowded as this, because there's a lot more men. So that's one nice thing about being one of only a few women on the team. All right, so after Hurricane Ike hit, not only did we check out Sabine Pass, but we also started doing walking searches of Galveston Island, because that also was hit very hard. Here you see, this is what we do. We walk neighborhoods, and we go from house to house and make sure that there's nobody home, that they don't need it taken out, they don't need anything. You will notice on the front porch is our force protection. Since Hurricane Katrina, FEMA has been sending out Force Pro with us on every single deployment. They are federal law enforcement officers from all different agencies. These guys were Borstar. They are the special ops of the Border Patrol. They married up with us for Gustav, and they stayed with us for the whole 21 days. So we got to know those guys really well. Amazing guys. So what they do is they go up, they check to make sure that it's safe, because People who stay behind are afraid of looters, so somebody comes up on their porch and they threaten to shoot. So Force Pro goes up, determines it's safe. We go in, make sure the structure is safe, nobody's in there and needs help out. And this is what we do on every single house, every single street, neighborhood after neighborhood, all down Galveston Island. So it took some days. The showers I talk about. So when we are self-sufficient for 72 hours, sometimes we are blessed to have a shower put up where we get hot water. Other times we bathe with baby wipes. And sometimes we may only get baby wipes to bathe for 3 or 4 days. So when we get the opportunity to shower in something like this, this is an absolute treat. But there's not a lot of showers for a lot of people. So we will have only a specific amount of time. We have to get in, shower, and then go to a changing area to change so more people can shower. And then you'll also see the military guys are using the sinks. This is what our 81 member team looked like at Hurricane Ike. So we always have a team picture taken just so we can keep it in our archives. Okay. This was actually us bunkering down for Hurricane Ike in Houston. We were at the Reliance Center, which was attached to the Reliance Stadium. Both of them incurred quite a bit of damage. Hurricane Ike was a high Cat 4. It was 120 to 130 mile hour winds that were sustained for over 12 hours. We laid there all night listening to this rage. Once the winds get below 40 miles an hour, we are then allowed to get out and start doing searches. So we just kind of had to weather Ike in the Reliance Center. Transitioning now, this is hurricane, well, we call it hurricane. It was Superstorm Sandy in New York. We had a number of challenges with Sandy. It was a very unique deployment for us because it was late October and it was cold. So we had no cold weather gear. We were wearing multiple layers, walking outside and freezing. So that was a new challenge. We've since got cold weather gear. And this was a no notice event for us. So I want to talk about that for a minute because sometimes it's a noticed event and sometimes we get no notice. My team was at 9/11. That was a no notice event. This was basically a no notice event where we were called and told that we were going and we had to be at headquarters within 2 hours. So the reason why this was no notice was because there's a national rotation model. We got 28 teams and every month it rotates. We were at the very bottom of the rotation model, so we never should have been called up, except when FEMA starts calling people. They will call some of the closest teams to the event and then they go to the rotation model. Because they waited till the last minute, they pulled the closest teams and we were the closest, and that's how we got pulled up. So I had no idea we were going. I wasn't even watching the radar, and I was immediately notified, and FEMA says they would like for us to be wheels up within 4 hours. Our team says 2. So when we receive notification, we have to drop what we're doing, immediately go home. We have all of our stuff packed and ready to go. We just have a few things we have to throw in, put our uniform on, go say goodbye to our kids and get to headquarters so that we can get our physicals, get briefed, and get on the road. So that was the challenge with Sandy because we were traveling at night in an ice storm. And the whole thing was just a very different challenge for us. Here we were doing walking searches. You can go ahead and change it. We were sleeping in gymnasiums. This is a high school gym. We were kind of sleeping wherever we could put our head. With Sandy, we had the opportunity to walk all of Long Island, and I mean all of it. We spent days walking one half and clearing all the houses, and then there were other teams on the other half, and then we did secondary searches on what the other team did on the other half of the island. We spent 5 or 6 days walking 14 miles a day in our uniforms and our boots. So that was a very physically taxing deployment as well. So the next couple of pictures will just give you an idea of what type of damage we were seeing with Sandy on Long Island. And with the very next picture, another really good picture of the devastation that they had when Long Island was just taken out by Sandy. Something super cool for us, when we were demobbed from Sandy, our team called Shanksville, the park at Shanksville Memorial, to see if we could get in. Since our team was at 9/11 and we weren't able to get to the 9/11 Memorial before we were demobbed, we were able to stop by Shanksville. They were closed. The parks service opened up for our team only so that we could see the Shanksville Memorial, and we could, as a team, just remember what 9/11 was about and what our team members sacrificed. Even though we couldn't do it at the memorial in New York, we were fortunate enough to be able to do it here. So that was an amazing opportunity to experience this with my team. Now I'm going to go to another deployment. This was Hurricane Harvey, also Houston, one of the biggest flooding events in our history. We went also something very new for FEMA with a 14-member team, and that was what was called an MRP. I talked about the 80-member team and a Type 1. We also have a Type 3, which is about 40 members. We can go with a Type 4, which is about 20 members, and an MRP, which is a mission-ready package. Usually it's water, and that will go with 16 members. This is the first time we went out as a water package. There were 14 of us, and that had its own challenges because 14, we can move a lot faster, we travel differently, and we literally are just laying our heads wherever 14 people can lay them. So a lot of times we're finding a place of our own, and the 14 of us are crowding in and just taking a quick sleep wherever we can find it. This was in a stadium where there were a lot of other people, not FEMA teams. We tried to stay separated because we have different way of doing things, different set of equipment. We found a concourse across from a concession stand that was dark and quiet, and we set up our cots, and this is where we slept for a couple of nights. This is us traveling in a van, a couple of pickup trucks, and the challenge here medically for us is we always harp on hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. And we can do that when we're on a bus where there's a bathroom. We're going into a high heat, high humidity. We're gonna put water suits on and we're gonna be sweating. So I worry about dehydration, and we can't hydrate well when we can't stop to go to the bathroom. So this was a whole new challenge. There was a whole new way of thinking and a set of challenges for medical. When we go out with an MRP, medical, there may only be one person, and it might just be me. So it requires me to communicate on a regular basis with one of our docs back home to be able to bounce stuff off of them and to make sure that the treatment that I'm doing when somebody's sick is what they would like to be done. We slept in a gymnasium. We had a little tiny corner. The 14 of us sleep together. We do not separate. I was the only female. We stay together as a team. We do everything together as a team. The second night we came back, and the military or the state police had taken over the entire gym and would not let me stay with the team because they had separated the females to a different part of the high school campus. So we moved to the high school cafeteria so that we could stay intact as a team. So this is just an example of another place that we had to sleep. The next few slides, I'm just going to highlight very quickly the main thing that we did with Harvey. We went as a water team, but we ended up not doing any boat ops or any water rescues. Instead, the biggest thing that we did was operate an airport and evacuate people who needed to get out. People who had to move from their homes to shelters. The shelters flooded out, and they were sent to this airport that was no longer in use, this portion of the airport, because it had been damaged by a hurricane a couple years before. So the building's damaged, had not been fixed, dirt floor, no air conditioning, no generator, and we were tasked with evacuating them by military air so that they could go to Houston. We've never operated an airport. We have no idea what we're doing at an airport. So the challenge for us was to come in and figure out how to get these people through their manifest and on a plane so that we could get them out. And nobody knew that they were coming. So they were just taken here, and all of a sudden this was an evacuee point that nothing had been set up. So we spent a few days working with the military and figuring out how to get people on the airplanes. And the next two pictures is what it looked like. A lot of people were dropping off supplies, which was great, but it was not organized. And to be quite honest, it looked and felt a little like a third world country evacuee point where they're trying to get them off of an island that has no resources. So this was we were very cut off, and it was very weird. This was another place that we slept. That's just another picture of that. We slept on the tarmac next to the runway that had these C-130s running all night. We had about a 5-hour break where we could go sleep on the tarmac outside. So that was that was a challenge. Once we are done with any deployment, FEMA likes for us to go out at the very end and do windshield tours. This is what we're doing. We're going into flooded places, making sure that people could get out if they need to. If they needed any help, we would get it to them. But basically what we're doing is we're taking pictures and we're sending this to FEMA. We are a search and rescue team, but before we leave, we're also documenting everything in GPS. We do it by technology, and it makes it easier for the people who have damage to get reimbursed faster if while we're there, we're documenting it constantly on technology. So we find that they get their reimbursement, their money, and they can start getting their things replaced and repaired, rebuilt faster if we go do this. So this is a lot of what we do before we go home. So now I'm going to transition into Hurricane Florence. This was a type 1. I talked about it a little bit earlier. This was in North Carolina. This was a very unique deployment for us. It was the first time that we had become an asset for the county that was going to get hit. So New Haven County asked for us as an asset. We were given to them as an asset. So that meant FEMA was not going to use us any other way. New Haven County said, this is where we need you guys. We were moved in to New Haven County before Florence hit. While Florence was not a high category, so the winds and structural collapse was not an issue, flooding was, because if you'll remember, that was where the massive storm sat on the coast for days and just kept dumping and hitting. So for us, the challenge was we endured the hurricane for days. We went immediately operational while the hurricane was still hitting because they were making runs and they needed help. We were also very physically, emotionally, mentally wore out. We were wet for probably a week, either from sweat or from rain. We were never dry, and you'll see in the upcoming pictures some of these things. First, we went to a Custom and Border Patrol airport. It was an international, very small airport with sleeping and baggage claim. All 81 of us, 80 plus of us, with our force protection, plus some military, were in this very small area and an area behind that wall that you see over here on the side. We were basically right on top of each other. This is where we endured the hit of the first part of the hurricane. This is where we started our operations out of. And then from there, we started moving so that places could become operational. So this is the first place we sat. The next two slides I'm going to talk about for just a minute. This is Wilmington Fire Department. This was a crew who I have the most incredible respect for. What you see here is this crew kneeling and praying over a situation that they had been working all night in the middle of the hurricane and had not been able to access. A tree had fallen on the house, trapped the mom, dad, and their baby, their newborn. Well, he wasn't a newborn, he was 11 months old. They were able to make a rescue with the dad, but they were unable to get to mom, but they were able to see her enough to say that she was deceased, and they could not find the baby. And they could not get the tree off the mom because of the way that the wind was hitting and the weight of the tree. They had already called for us to come help them when they were caught on camera kneeling and praying. This was an amazing group of men that when we pulled up, were sitting there on the bumpers of their trucks, dejected, with their heads down, feeling like there was no hope. They've done everything that they could. They were physically wore out. They needed help and couldn't get it because they were wore out as a fire department and taxed on runs. I was assigned to a squad that was sent out to assist this crew. We were with them all day while we came up with a plan and worked side by side with them, working on cutting that tree and dropping the whole floor and the bed that they were on from underneath the tree so that we could access the mom and find the baby. When we found the baby, and you can go to the next slide, this is an example of us working side by side. There is no better picture that can show what our job is. It is to go in and assist and support the local operations in the job that they're doing. And this was us helping them side by side as a team. Once they were able to move the mom enough, they thought that they found the baby. My job as a medical specialist was to climb underneath the tree and access enough of the baby to determine whether the baby was viable and whether this was a rescue or a recovery. Unfortunately, the baby also is deceased like the mom. And I'm gonna be honest, this was one of the most memorable scenes that I've ever worked in my 30 years. I will, for the rest of my life, never forget it. It makes me emotional to this day to see the hope in their eyes when I climbed up there to see if the baby was alive, and to turn around and tell them that the baby was gone, and to watch their heads drop and them to physically cry was exceptionally difficult. These men handled themselves the most professionally. I will never forget the job that they did. So this was the start of our operations for Hurricane Florence. From the Border Patrol, we moved to an empty Sears building attached to a mall, where we were able to stay for 3 or 4 days. And you can see that we have found a way to hang up all of our wet stuff. We had wet clothes hung up everywhere. We were laying in wet clothes, and we would put wet clothes back on. We worked during the operation. During the hurricane hitting, we went out on a night where neighborhoods were flooding, to the point they were flooding so fast that people could not get out. One of the neighborhoods that we as a team went in and were rescuing families and bringing them out, their husband was one of the firefighters that we had assisted on the tree on the family. So it's just amazing how we were able to interact and make that connection. We were forever touched by this hurricane. So picture me getting ready to jump up in our military vehicle to take us to what was one of our assignments for a couple of days. We went to one of the local fire departments. And as a crew, we did 24-hour ops. I was in the day ops. We would go sit in their bay, and when they would make a water run or a fire run or something that needed extra manpower, we would go with them and assist them. So we kind of boosted their numbers and helped with their runs from a fire department. This was our way of getting there. The next picture is myself and one of our doctors that we were on the same day ops at the fire department. Our shift was over, we were getting ready to leave, and I'm holding one of our canines. He actually came like a therapy dog for us because we were able to love on him, play with them. Our canines are not just search dogs, but they're dogs that we can love on and sometimes cry in. So after we got back from Hurricane Florence, we were home for 2 weeks when we were redeployed as an MRP water to Hurricane Michael. We were sent to the panhandle of Florida. We were pre-staged before Michael hit and were able to get into the disaster area immediately after it hit. What we thought was going to be a water event ended up being a lot of collapsed structures and a lot of structural damage. So we again went from being a water team to a team of 16 of us that traveled this time, and we did a lot of walking searches and a lot of tree removal. So this is our final team picture of the 16 of us that went. Pre-staged at a military base. This is where the men slept. The women had a different place, but we were in the same building, and this is before the hurricane hit. The next few pictures are just a tiny glimpse of what we were seeing all over the panhandle. This and the next couple pictures, you can go ahead and run those, are not even at the coast. Michael was a massive storm that actually they have said was a Cat 5, a low Cat 5 when it hit. It spun up so fast and got bad so fast that the residents could not get out. And that is what we were hearing from all of them. It happened so fast we couldn't get out. I will never ever weather one of those storms again. This damage that you're seeing was at the Florida-Alabama line. So that was how widespread the damage was from the coast to the Alabama line. And we were sent up to the Alabama line, trees down everywhere. We became tree removal experts because beyond this is a road. Beyond this was a neighborhood that nobody could access, and the people in the neighborhood could not get out. So we had to clear a way so that we could get back there, make sure that the people could get out if they needed to. We could get them out. We could get them medical help if they needed it. And this is what we did, neighborhood after neighborhood after neighborhood. We cut up trees and moved them. We also constantly moved our tent. 16 of us, again, we move everywhere. We were moving out almost every single night, and we became experts at moving our tent, tearing it down. This is us after a long day of going out and walking through neighborhoods, cutting trees, moving the tree branches. We had to come back and move. So at night, this is like 8:30 at night, we had to break our tent down, move it, put it back up before we could even eat. So the next picture is us finally eating. We all sleep in one tent. Thank God we had moved and evolved from our first MRP, which was Harvey, where we were just sleeping wherever we could lay our head, to a tent, and we had an air conditioner. So it was like the world's best treat. So all 16 of us slept in here. You see our cots, we're all basically right on top of each other. We're actually getting a briefing while we're eating our dinner. When we go out with an MRP, when we go out, we do MREs, meals ready to eat. We will subside on those quite a bit. With an MRP, we eat those most of the time. So when we were able to get real food, it was like we hadn't eaten in days, because we hadn't eaten in days. Not like we were starving or anything, but this was us moving to another place. We were in the parking lot of a college. So up till that point, we had been held in a holding area with state assets, local assets, and while we don't necessarily mind being where all the assets are, FEMA, we prefer to move off to a different area. We prefer to stay with FEMA teams and keep all of our equipment separate because we do travel with so much equipment. It's easier for us to make sure our equipment is safe when we are off a little. So we moved all the FEMA assets to the state college, and then this is where we actually got food for the first time in 4 days. And my God, hamburgers never tasted so good in my entire life. And I'm just saying, not one seasoning on it. Then we moved to a community college, a different one, where there were other assets. Again, FEMA, we kind of kept off to ourselves. We moved the air conditioners from the tent to this place. We were the only ones that had air conditioning. This became our home for 3 days. And because we were so small, we began every evening, we would eat as a family. So we would line our tables up and we would not sit down to eat until everybody was there. We would say a prayer, and as a family, we would eat together. So a special group, really had an awesome time with this group. This last picture is a picture of showers. This was like the Hilton showers. So, I mean, this is totally enclosed shower unit. They had times for women that could go shower at specific times. So we're still in the college. We had no other way to shower unless it was baby wipes, which we had already done that for days at the beginning of the deployment. So with this is just another idea of what our showers are. So this is basically most of our deployments, the big deployments that we've been on. I will say that in 2019, we went on Hurricane Dorian. That actually is what wiped out the Bahamas and was headed for Florida, was going to cover the state of Florida. We were sent to Florida, and then it took a turn and headed up to the Carolinas. Another time that it was unique, the state of Florida grabbed us as an asset, so we became Florida's asset and did not move. So while Hurricane Dorian kind of ended up hitting the North Carolina coast, Wilmington asked for us because they wanted to work with us again. We were hoping that we would be released to be able to work with our team again. But that did not happen. We stayed in Florida until Florida released us, and then we came on home. So that was 2019's deployment. 2020, we expect in the future to be going on more deployments because the hurricane season is becoming more active every year. Something super exciting for 2020 is we will be doing a team exercise in Tennessee, and we will hopefully have the opportunity to be able to go to Israel and work with the Israeli Defense Force over there and train on rubble piles with them, with their equipment and their home. So this is the end of my PowerPoint presentation. Now we will go into some question and answers and some lessons learned that I'd like to pass on to you.
Hi guys, so we are going to go into our Q&A right now. So my name is Allie Douglas. I am the president of Eta Sigma Iota, and I'm so honored to have my mom here with us today, and she'll go into some points and questions and answers, but this is...
My name is Jocelyn Gadberry. I'm also a senior in the Homeland Security Program, and I am the vice president of Eta Sigma Iota.
All right. So the first question is, you had mentioned earlier no notice versus notice events. And I know preparing in our house is crazy and different on both levels.
Yep.
But I don't know if a lot of people really know and understand what this is about. So my question is, like, how do you prepare for deployment when it's a notice event versus a notice event, no notice event?
Okay, great question. I keep all my stuff packed and in my closet. So most of my closet, half my closet is all my task force stuff. I have a note that I've written out. So once we're deployed, once we're activated, I will pack everything with that note and then my medicine, all that. And then if I need new prescription medicines, I'll run to the pharmacy real quick. I have a lot of phone calls I have to make because I have to drop my part-time shifts. I have to notify the fire department so that they know they can start getting my spot filled with overtime. And then I start notifying my family. So first, I notify the fire department, and then I notify my part-time jobs because I'm kind of leaving them in a bind. Then I notify you guys because then you guys, and I'm pointing at Matt because he's filming, I drop my life on you guys and I start making notes so that you guys know what needs to be taken care of, and I notify all you guys. So whether it's a notice or a no notice event, all that stuff is in place. It's just if it is a no notice event, I am scrambling. So I immediately move into disaster mode and I drop everything in my head about what's going on the rest of that day, the coming days. I notify people and I forget about my normal life and I move into disaster mode and disaster thinking. So, the biggest difference is not necessarily for me, but it is for you guys, because you go through your day and all of a sudden you get a phone call and I'm like, hey, I'm being deployed to this place and I'm leaving at this time, and you guys are like, what? So that is probably the biggest thing, is my employers and you guys between the two events.
So that brings up another point. When you're getting ready to leave, you like you had said, you transition from your calendar, your schedule, your thought process of the very day, and your different jobs, and you immediately have to shut that thought process down and switch over to disaster mode. And it's just the same way when you come home, except for you're going from disaster mode, and you have to, and this is a great analogy, you've mentioned it before, you are having to step onto a roller coaster that does not stop. It just keeps going. So it is very hard, and I feel like families feel that the most, but it's also kind of hard for people to understand that you're coming back and you're here, but you're not necessarily back yet. So I guess one thing is there anything like that you'd like to say about that, or?
Yeah, you know what? You just described it all very well, because this is something that we have discussed over the years. 14 years. This is what you guys know. This is your life. This is what you guys know with me. And you're exactly right. I compartmentalize everything. Probably psychologists would not think that was healthy, but it's what keeps me going in all my jobs. My life is a very fast-moving roller coaster, and this is actually something that a lot of us on the team have talked about, because we're all super busy. We all work a lot of jobs. We go from one to another, and we're constantly moving. And as soon as I'm activated, I immediately make phone calls. I ditch my responsibilities in my life, and I don't give one thought to it. Not one thought. I shut that door. and my mind completely is activated on disaster. Is what is my role? What do I need to do now? And I switch everything, my thinking, my sleeping. I sleep whenever I get a chance to sleep. I eat any chance I get to eat. So my everything that I do is changed to disaster mode. It is so much more difficult to transition back. Transitioning back and stepping back into that fast moving roller coaster, I have trouble stepping back in, and I have trouble hanging on. And because when I'm gone, everybody understands that. The second I'm back, literally the second I'm back, life is like, awesome, you're back. Here's all this responsibility, and I'm inundated. And all of us have difficulty transitioning back into our lives. Our families have missed us, things have happened, they have things they want to tell us, and they missed us. So we go from sleeping right next to each other, sitting next to each other on a bus, crammed next to each other eating. We are constantly on top of each other, and we're all okay with that because it's a disaster. The second that we come back home and the guys at the fire department want to be right next to us, or they are because we all live together, you guys want, it is overwhelming, is probably the best word to use. We need to decompress. FEMA recognizes that because they don't, we have 24 or 48 hours that we transition back into the fire department. But the rest of our life, I struggled coming back from Florence, transitioning back. And I'm going to be honest here. I am more than a year out from Florence, and I still have not fully transitioned back. I could not get transitioned back into life. I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want to be around people, but I didn't want to be alone. I struggled, and a lot of it had to do with the run that I talked about with the Wilmington Fire Department, and how it affected me mentally and emotionally. 2 weeks later, we were redeployed to Michael. I was rostered, and I was asked if I was ready to go, because I wasn't the only one having trouble coming back from Florence. And I knew inanely that I needed to get back out of the real world and get back into disaster mode so that I could find a way to get myself reacclimated coming back out. And I knew that that was the answer I needed, and it was. I was able to come back and get back into my life. Mentally and emotionally, I still have not recovered. And this is the first time in my fire department career and my task force career that I still have not reacclimated. And it's emotionally difficult because that was such an emotional deployment. It was the hardest deployment we've had. And basically what I've realized is this is my new norm. And I'm not going to go back to the way things were before Florence, because at Florence, everything in me changed. So this is my new norm. I'm going to be honest, because I am easily overwhelmed now. Probably the best word is overstimulated. Because of everything that we endured with Florence, it changed something in me, and I easily overstimulate. So I have to understand myself what causes me to be overstimulated and overwhelmed, and see that that's coming and find a way to step out before I hit that point so that I don't have a struggle. So, that was a very important question, because in this line of work, the reason why I hit that point at Hurricane Florence was because of 30 years of everything that I have done and seen and felt that just reached a pinnacle for that one run with that mom and that baby and that crew from Wilmington Fire Department that made it difficult for me to emotionally work through that. And I still am. And to be honest, I think I always will. So that's a very deep answer to your quick question.
And thank you so much for covering that, because I know, especially in this field, and we'll kind of talk about it here in a little bit, but mental health is something that first responders are really starting to hit and talk about. But like I said, we'll cover that in a little bit. So we had some students send questions in. The first one is it hard to have a family life in this line of work?
Is it hard to have you know what? family life is how you define it. By society's standards, family life would be difficult in this line of work. I started this line of work before you guys were born. And so this is all you guys have ever known. And I felt guilty as a mom about being gone from the fire department and then teaching, and I was precepting and I was gone all the time. And then I added the task force as if my life was not crazy enough. And I felt guilty. I knew I was doing what I needed to do and that I was going to be able to be very impactful. But how could I do this for the general public and not sacrifice my kids in the meantime? And so my plan from the very beginning was to include them in everything I could so that they had buy-in. If they were part of it, then they were part of something bigger. And so they weren't upset that I was leaving, they were part of it. And that gave them pride in what I was doing. And what I had no idea that I was doing was setting Allie up to do this and to be what she wants to be. So while I thought I was kind of messing my kids up, I actually was setting you up to mess you up in your own career. That's what I was doing. It was my plan all along. But what I would do is I would have them in my EMT classes and they would sit there while I lectured. They were patients. They were my helpers. Then they were the ones who were instructing because they were there all the time. They were part of our task force training exercises and our trainings. So they would be the patients. We would package. So they would help us after deployments put things together. Like, is it difficult to have a family life in this career? It's what you make it. You decide what your family life is going to be. Christmas, birthdays, holidays, they were on the day that we chose them to be. It might have been 2 days before or 3 days after. It was not about that one calendar day. It was about being together. And that's how they grew up. And they grew up knowing it wasn't about one thing, what society says it needs to be. It's what we made it. And we made it fun and we made it happy. So our family life has been amazing. It's been an adventure because we chose to do that. So it's what you make it. And if you started out like that, that's how it will be. And you can bless your kids.
Well, and even like if Allie didn't want to choose the public safety field, she was able to grow up with that incredible role model that can help her, like the lessons that she learned growing up can help her going forward, even if she didn't pick the same career.
Right.
So
right, and it gave them a different perspective in school. You know, in school there's a lot of drama, and kids, you know, it's like, you know, their big crisis is the world's biggest thing at that moment. And Allie would go to school and be like, "This is nothing. This is nothing. You guys have no idea what's going on in the world." In another part of the country, there's total devastation in people's lives. They've lost their entire life, and that's news. This right here, this is not news. You know, this is no big deal. So she had a more of a worldly perspective than right now it's all about me perspective. And that's what I prefer anyway in my kids. So, you know, they were living that instead of me just saying it, they were watching it. So it was I've been able to be a living example of what, you know, what's going on in the world. And it's bigger than what we are and who we are.
So how did you get started with Indiana Task Force 1? Because you mentioned before that you were a firefighter before. And so what kind of led you to the task force?
I did not know anything about the task force until a friend of mine who I've been friends with when I precepted for years, he was talking about it. Like, he was on the team. Initially, you had to be on a Marion County Fire Department to be part of the task force. Then they opened it up to the surrounding counties. And before they opened it up, he was talking about it. And I'm like, ooh, tell me more about this. This sounds like something I would do. And the more he talked about it, I'm like, that's me. That's me. Like, I didn't know it, but until he talked about it. And the second they opened it up, I called the guy that was in charge, was like, I know you. You're really good at what you do. I didn't have to apply or anything. I filled out one application and he was like, you're on. And so I was one of the very first people outside Marion County who was allowed to be on. And that, it was just hearing the stories. My friend Chuck that was telling me about it we have been deployed together every single time except for 2 times. Once he went out without me, once I went out with him. We're a duo and we go together. We're like the world's best combination, always on the same bus, always on the same crew. And, he was the one that built that desire and that love in me. And I have been so fortunate to be able to go out the door with him and be this amazing duo that has just had some of the most awesome experiences. So that was it. It was being ready. It was being ready. Had I been lazy and not cared, not been the best to me, and just kind of making, going to my job and making money, I would never have been ready for an expert level team. I would have never been allowed on. So, I was ready. So when the opportunity opened up, I took it. I stepped through that door and I just grabbed a hold of it. And I mean, what an amazing adventure.
Yeah.
It has been.
So one of our other students had asked the question, what's the certain point where you knew that what you do was meant, like it was just all meant to be?
I was 5 years old. I was literally 5 years old. Emergency.
Yeah.
It's like the best show ever. Emergency was like the coolest show still. And it was on TV. And like to my earliest knowledge of thinking back, I knew I was going to be a firefighter. I'd see a fire truck go by and I'm like, I'm going to do that. It wasn't like, oh, I want to be, like I said, that's what I'm going to do. And when I watched Emergency, I'm like, yep, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. And I would sit with my little fire helmet on every time it was on and just absorb it. And at 5 years old, I said, I'm going to be a firefighter. And girls did not say that at that time. Mm-hmm. I mean, women in the fire service was not a thing when I was 5 years old. And it was not that long ago. I mean, I am kind of old, but it wasn't like, 100 years ago. So, people would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm like, I'm going to be a firefighter. And they would go, no, what do you really want? I remember that. And I'm like, I'm going to be a firefighter. And I would get frustrated, like, what do you not understand? I said it clearly. I still want to be a firefighter like 2 minutes ago. And so I'd be like, okay. And I would just ignore him because I'm like, I made myself clear. A little sassy at 5, so.
And now it's like, look at me now.
Yeah, and I only got the same sassiness. I knew at 5 years old that's what I was going to do. I let go of that a little bit in high school, went to college to be a music major because I loved music and I wanted to teach. Then I decided, you know what, I can do this. And I switched back over and decided to focus on this. But the fun thing is I developed a love for education. So maybe I didn't become a music teacher, but I did become an EMT instructor and teach paramedic for years. And now I'm a substitute teacher in the schools working with the special ed. So my entire adult career, I have still been teaching. Mm-hmm. It's just in this field. So yeah, I was 5. Don't discount 5-year-olds and what little kids say. Sometimes they know. Sometimes.
No. So another great question that we had was, how do you maintain all aspects of your life while being so involved 24/7?
I am a master at the calendar.
Yes.
I am very organized. We're very scheduled, and we had a very rigid schedule. The calendar was always color coded so that you could know when I was working. Every job had a color so that you could quickly glance at the calendar and know mom's working this job, that's those hours. So it was very scheduled. And in that, once I would schedule my fire department and then my part-time job responsibilities, which there's a hierarchy in those, that one gets scheduled before the other, then I can go, I have 3 free hours today. How can I fill that? Oh, somebody wants me to help him. So I'm going to go help my friend this day for these 6 hours. And so basically it's all built off of a schedule. Firefighters tend to be very scheduled. We live off of the firefighter calendar. So every 3rd day, that's when we work. And it is all color coded and planned out this month. I will plan out for all of 2020. Everything. So then any open spots are open to be filled, and they will be filled. I have 6 free hours every night, and that's when I sleep. Everything else is pretty scheduled and ordered. So that's my life. And my life then was included, that's how I included you guys. Because so when I would build that calendar and I would see it and I'd be like, oh, I suck as a mom. No, I'm not going to suck as a mom. I'm going to make the kids go with me on these nights so that they are part of my life. This training they will go to, this they will go to. So that's where I started plugging in them into that calendar. So but that's how it worked for us.
Yeah.
Still.
And I'm so thankful that you took us everywhere with you, because when you're little, you know, it's just like, make sure you bring a bag of toys and movies. We've watched lots of movies on the floor of your office.
In my classroom.
Yeah,
Yep.
but I love going to trainings and everything. And when I was little, you know, I'd hear it and I would be like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then I'd go right back to what I was playing with or whatever I was doing. And then now when I got older, I really started getting it and going to trainings and starting a program here, and all of your stories and everything that you were telling me about FEMA, and it all just clicked. It made sense. And then to have that switch of you telling me, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's really cool, and asking you questions too, like, I get it. And then having a conversation with you about it, it's very neat for me to see that transition and that change.
That growth up.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, something dorky about you that you are my child. I mean, we have to do after action reports. FEMA requires after every training exercise and deployment, we do after action reports. Well, I was a medical manager for years, and so I would write the after action reports. Well, she was still in junior high when she's like, what are you typing? And I'm like, it's an after action report. Like, it's totally boring. And she's like, well, what is it? I want to read it when you're done. I'm like, well, read it in bed because I fall asleep. So she started reading my medical portion of the after action report. So initially it was just my points, and then she wanted to see what the medical division put together. And then she was like, well, I want to see what the whole report is. And I mean, the whole report is like a package. It's a booklet, and that's what we turn into FEMA. So I started sending her the after action reports for every deployment and training exercise. And then she would read the entire after action report, and it would all start bringing to life the whole deployment that I went on. Then, since she was in this program, I started sending her our sit reps. So every situational update that we were getting, I would send it to her and go, here's what's going on. So she was able to see real time what FEMA was sending out, what we were doing, and then she would see the final stuff that we were putting together. So it's kind of fun that all these weird things that I was typing up, you were reading, and you were like thinking it was cool, and I thought you were weird, and it all makes sense. It all yeah,
Makes so much sense now.
You know what I mean?
Allie is the biggest nerd you'll ever meet.
Thank you.
It is. It's my daughter.
With all of the things that you have done throughout the years and all of your experience, what are some of the biggest lessons that you have learned, either like in training or out in the field, and between all of your jobs, maybe not necessarily with the task force, but all together? What are some of the biggest lessons?
That is an excellent question. And before you even came up with a question, I had already come up with 14 lessons that I summed up on the road to the task force. And these are good for anybody in life. It's not specific to this field necessarily. The first one, allow yourself to dream. Allow yourself to dream, and dream big, because the dream that you have, maybe you'll have 4 or 5 of them. Maybe they'll all morph into one. But I see in the schools a lot of times that the kids, they have these dreams, and then somewhere around intermediate age, they start just saying, that'll never work. And they talk themselves out of it, teachers, parents. And I think you have to have a dream. You have to have a dream that you can have a goal to work toward, and you need to let it evolve. I said I was going to be a firefighter. I had no idea about EMS until I became a volunteer. And had I said, nope, I'm only going to be a firefighter, I let that evolve into, you know what, I really like taking care of people, and I'm really, really good at it. That's why I moved into paramedic school. That's why I ended up teaching. So my dream of being a firefighter was the beginning, and I let it evolve so that it totally took this other course and ended up taking me to the task force, which is a high-level expert, my role as medical. So my dream of a firefighter led me to being medical on the task force. So you need to have that dream. You need to let it evolve. I believe that if that's your dream, I believe that my dream was given to me and put on my heart for my purpose. It didn't have to make sense to anybody else. Matter of fact, it made sense to nobody else. And even to this day, women in the fire service, not always accepted. So I might be a 27-year veteran of career firefighter. I'm the most senior person on the fire department. And there are still new guys that come into the fire department today who I could be their grandmother, honestly, who they feel like I need to prove to them that I deserve to be there. I don't have to prove to them that this was my job and my dream and my purpose. So believe that if that dream was put on your heart, that it is there to serve your purpose and you got to follow it. Don't let anybody talk you out of that. It's good to have people to counsel you, but you need to trust those people and not just listen to everybody else who they don't know you. So listen to your own heart. I have to say, and I'm going to give a story here. It'll be a quick story. When Matt was 5, Allie was 8, not quite 9, we were involved in a car accident. And it was a very bad accident. Matt was critically injured with multiple injuries that should have been fatal for his age. He was very close to being a fatal in the car. Because we were involved, their dad was in the car at the time as well. I realized while we were trapped in the car that everything that I had ever done in my career, it went back to when I was 5. When I was 5, I believed that dream put on my heart was meant for me, and I let nobody talk me out of that. So that when my son was 5, I could make a difference in his life and I could save his life because I followed my dream. I became the best that I could be. I didn't let anybody talk me out of it. I was the best at every single run I was on for every person I took care of. And it led to saving my son's life. So had I not followed my dream and I would have done what everybody said was the right thing and be a music teacher because that's what girls do, Matt wouldn't be here today. So you got to follow your dream. You don't know where it's going to take you and how it's going to impact you and others in your life and people that you don't even know that aren't even in your life yet. Have big goals with those dreams. Okay, the dream can evolve, but you got to have big goals. Like if you're not going to get in your car and go on a trip and not know where you're going, you got to have goals so you know where you're going. And it will evolve, but you got to make sure that you got those goals. And you got to gain experience to get there. The task force is an expert level. I'm considered a subject matter expert. I didn't get there just because I hired on at the fire department and I said I'm a firefighter paramedic and now I'm an expert. That came with years of experience. I hired on in 1993 as a career firefighter paramedic. I excelled and made myself an expert on all levels so that in 2005, I could then start at the expert level. And I'm still learning on that level. So just because you got a dream, you believe it was put on your heart for a purpose, you've got goals, and you're hitting those goals, you still have to gain experience in order to get to that big goal. Take opportunities. I mean, that's what I was talking about. Task force, never on my radar. Didn't even know anything about it. Not at all. But I was told about it. That door opened up. And without talking myself out of it, because, I'm just a little girl from Greenfield, I don't belong in a realm like that. You know what? I said, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. And I know I'm made for that. And so I'm going to do it. That door opened. I took that opportunity. I took the opportunity to be able to run the entire EMT program at Methodist Hospital and become a premier program that I was able to build up. And when that opportunity went away, an opportunity to be a substitute teacher and work with the special ed kids was an opportunity that made no sense whatsoever. Not at all EMS related, but I have a talent for that. And I have a love for the kids. And I was able to share that love with Matt and Allie, so that they were able to have an opportunity. When the opportunity opened, they took it to be able to work with the special ed kids for a year and a half before she came here and be totally blessed and learn so many lessons. And the same thing with Matt for a semester. So opportunities that I took opened up opportunities for them. When you take an opportunity, even when it's like it doesn't completely make sense, but when you feel that that's what you want to do, then it's meant to build you, to make you better, more well-rounded, more capable of dealing with something in that realm that will add to what you want to do, your big goal, your big dream. So take opportunities. Humble yourselves. All right, I know what I do is super cool. I still clean toilets at the fire department. Okay, and 27-year veterans don't have to clean toilets. That's the new guy. But you know what? It's part of what our job is. The toilets have to be cleaned, and I'm going to clean the toilets. I humble myself because I don't say, I'm the most important person. I never have that attitude. So when you humble yourself is when, you show others how to lead. You become a leader, and you show everybody that you're never too good, too big to still do the little things, because all those little things are what made me what I am today. So why am I going to stop doing the little things? Because I don't want to slide back. I want to keep building who I am. So humble yourself, do the dirty work, and do it well. Be willing to work outside your comfort zone. Let me tell you what, outside my comfort zone was the task force. That was huge. I went from being, the best paramedic in Hancock County, because at that point, up to that point, we were the only paramedic service. Everybody preferred me taking care of them. Like, I kind of reached a pinnacle there. I stepped into an opportunity that stretched me. It was uncomfortable. It was scary. It was on a level I had no idea about, but I was willing to learn. I asked a lot of questions. I humbled myself, and I was willing to learn. So be willing to work outside your comfort zone, because growth and opportunity happen here. Have an attitude of gratitude. Honestly, 30 years in this job, all the opportunities that I've had, and I am so grateful for everybody who has poured into me, who has answered my questions, who has been patient with me, who has laughed with me when I've learned and made a lot of dumb mistakes. So I am always grateful, and I will always be grateful for every opportunity that I've been given, even in the schools. It has nothing to do with the task force. But working with the special ed and kids that are autistic have helped me at the fire department and can help me in a disaster zone. So I am grateful for every opportunity that I've had. Maintaining that gratitude will help keep you humble, and be gracious. It's easy when you've been in a job a little bit and you've kind of felt your way and now you're settling in, you're not the new guy, to look back at the new people and go, psh, and start making comments. Look at how crazy, yeah, because they're learning. When we're gracious, we reach back and we help those who are coming in behind us to bring them up. Just like the people who came before you, who reached down and were gracious and are helping you. Always be gracious to yourself and to other people. Respect yourself. Respect those who gave you the opportunity that you're in. Respect those that you're working with, even if you don't like them, because you're not going to like everybody, and that's okay. But you're going to respect them anyway, because they're in the job that they're doing and they're a human being. And I am most passionate about respecting those who came before. I had the opportunity of working with everybody who came before and paved the way at our fire department for everybody that works there. They are not a person that is a picture on a wall. Most of them are dead and gone. I worked with them. They were my shift partners. They had my back. I learned from them. And I'm passionate about respecting the path that they laid, because without the path and their sacrifice, I wouldn't have had the opportunity, and I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do everything that I've done. So having that respect, I think, is very important. Be the best that you can be, because comparison kills. I don't want to be the best that guy. I don't want to be the best this person. I want to be the best that I can be. I compete with myself. I challenge myself. I review every single run I'm on, fire or EMS, to determine, was there a better way? Was there a way I could do it quicker and safer? Did I do my job to the best of my ability? I don't care what everybody else is doing. I want to be the best that I can be. So don't compare yourself to others and think, well, I want that. It's easy to do that. Well, I want to be there. I want that position. I want to be on the task force. Well, then work for it. Work for it and you can have it too. So those are the things that I try to tell people at the fire department. Never stop learning. Always be a student. 27 years doing this, not a lot I haven't done. I mean, I've pretty much done just about everything. I'm still learning. There's still new things coming out in EMS and medicine that I struggle with. I can be a student to the new paramedics that are coming out because they spent time on that in class. So I always see that I have so much to learn. So always be a student and don't quit on your dream. I'm going to tell you about a friend that I have that was on Broadway. She was the longest running Carlotta in the history of Phantom of the Opera. I went to school with her, grew up with her. She was one of my best friends, one of my dearest friends. She spent 14 years in New York City working off Broadway, doing small shows, waiting tables, was about to quit and come back to Indiana when she tried out one last time for Phantom and got in the chorus. And so she was in the chorus and then began to be an understudy for Carlotta before she was given the main role. That was her big dream. From college, she's like, that's what I want to do. She never gave up on her dream. 14 years of humbling herself and never giving up. That's what you got to think about. It doesn't always come quick. There's lessons along the way that we have to learn in order to build ourselves and make ourselves ready. So don't quit on that dream. And be ready for your time. When the time comes, make sure you're as educated and up on your training, as physically ready. If I was not physically in shape, I wouldn't have been the best person for the task force. Because it's not just that I'm tiny to get in tiny, tiny places to confined spaces for patients, but I'm strong. Because if I wasn't strong, I could get in there and package, but I could not physically pull them out on my own. So I am the entire package because I was physically ready and I maintained my physical fitness. You don't know when opportunities are going to open up. So you have to make sure you are ready in every aspect, mentally, emotionally, physically, and make sure that you know what you're doing so that you're ready for those opportunities. And lastly, I want to talk about what you were talking about, mental health. We are only humans. We do superhuman things. We do extraordinary things. But we need to make sure that we remember that we're only human beings and that we have feelings and that we carry that. Mental health, as you guys both talked about, is huge. We've got more and more first responders committing suicide. There is a load that we carry that if we don't learn how to process it and share it with others and let other people help carry that load, we will shorten our careers, we will burn out, we will be less effective, and we will not be able to enjoy life. And that's not why we're called to sacrifice. After Hurricane Florence, I could not figure out how to process this on my own. There was something about touching that baby. There was something about confirming that baby's death, and then passing that news on to those guys and watching them cry that triggered something in me to release a lot of things that I had compartmentalized over the years. And I did not know it was going to do that, did not see it was coming, and had no idea how to process it. I couldn't do it on my own. I was not afraid to go ask for help. Had I not asked for help, I would not have been ready to go out on Hurricane Michael, and I wouldn't be where I am today. I have to do a lot of work of this myself. I talk to somebody. I talk to them on a regular basis. It was a counselor who helped me figure out ways to be able to work through this. There is no shame in talking to a mental health professional. That's what they're there for. I'm trained to save lives. They're trained to help people who do this mentally. Just because I save lives does not mean I know how to save my own self mentally. So I'm still working on that. It is something that I will continue to progress through. But I think you need to find your vent buddy. I have 2 or 3 guys at the fire department that I unload on. They are the ones that hear my hurts. They cry with me. They are the ones who endure it with me. So I start with talking to them. Find somebody you can talk to that understands what you're going through. And if that doesn't work, don't be ashamed to go get help. Mental health is a huge thing. That's how you can stay healthy so that you can have a healthy family life and continue in your job and be able to help people to your highest capability, because that's what they deserve. So those are the lessons that I've learned along the way. It's helpful for anybody in any phase of life, any job. So anything else you guys want to add?
You covered everything. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. I love this. Thanks for letting me come and talk your ears off and share my experiences. And if anybody else that's watching this has questions, you guys can write those down, get them to Allie or Jocelyn, and then they can get them to me, and we can do another videoed recording of the Q&A, and hopefully I'll be back next semester and can do this in person.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you, Matt.